We're heading over to Colonial Park Cemetery next, the oldest municipal cemetery in the United States. It's got Revolutionary War soldiers and signers of the Declaration of Independence buried in it, and some of our earliest yellow fever epidemic victims. It doesn't have any Civil War soldiers buried in it, though, because it was closed for new burials before the Civil War even began due to overcrowding from the yellow fever epidemics. However, during the Civil War, it was occupied by Union troops of the living kind who had to stay out here at the edge of town while Sherman and his officers went into town to enjoy the luxuries of the green Meldrum House. And these guys weren't so happy about their sleeping arrangements during the coldest Christmas of the Civil War, so they chose to show their discontent by taking target practice on tombstones and changing dates on tombstones. You can find people out here who died before they were even born. You can find daughters buried next to mothers, and the daughters have an earlier birthday. You can find crypts that they broke into, emptied out the coffins, used them as firewood, and even made makeshift chimneys in some of the crypts themselves. And have them reinterred, but by that time they had already laid the foundations of the road, and that means we're riding over coffins right now, even as we speak, and probably not even for the last time. Now, you know why they put fences up around cemeteries? Because people are dying to get in. And during the daytime, if you look down the length of the wall here on our right, you can see tombstones embedded in the brick. Those are the tombstones that couldn't match up with graves during the Reformation period after the Civil War was over. Here we have a police station built on part of the graveyard. It's under renovation right now. And further up on the right, we have a jailhouse that was built on the graveyard. And when the prisoners were kept there, they used to complain of the ghost that would harass them day and night. But today, don't worry, it's no longer a jailhouse, it's a high school. So it stores a different type of prisoner these days. And they have their dances in the cell block and their classes in the guard tower. Restored by Savannah College of Art and Design. Now it's leased out to Haversham School, which is a private school, which means you actually have to pay to be incarcerated there these days. Now, the most famous ghost story of Colonial Park Cemetery is the story of Rene Ash Rondelet. Rene was a kid who lived here way back in the late 1700s, and he was a kid with big problems. He probably had a thyroid disorder or a case of gigantism or something like that. They didn't quite understand in the late 1700s because the reports of the day claimed that Rene was cursed. They say he was huge and misshapen, never could read or write, had the mind of a child even as a teenager, but by the time he reached the age of 17, he stood nearly 7 foot tall and was covered from head to toe in hair. They say he played out here in this cemetery all the time, and that's why they started to call it Rene's Playground. And that might be even why I decided to put a playground in such a creepy place right by the back gate of the cemetery. But as Renee got older, he picked up some more worrisome habits. Besides playing in a graveyard, he would sometimes follow children home when they walked past the graveyard in the afternoons from school. And they began to find the bodies of strangled animals after he'd play around the cemetery and the Rondelay estate. Dogs and cats, mostly strays, sometimes wild animals too, like raccoons and possums. This went on for a while, nobody did anything about it, but then one morning, found the body of a young woman who'd been strangled and left in the dirt of Foley's Alley on the other side of the cemetery, and there were giant footprints leading away from the scene of the crime. So everybody blamed Renee, and they formed up a mob, went looking for him all over Savannah. He wasn't immediately seen in the cemetery, but late in the day, they found him hiding underneath the ground in an old crypt. They dragged him to the light of day and out to a swamp on the outskirts of town where they hanged him, and then delivered his lifeless corpse to the widow Rondelay, who had him buried on her estate and given a proper funeral. And that was supposed to be the end of it. But about a week later, another woman's body was found strangled in Foley's Alley. And then shortly after that, they found another victim in the cemetery. Finally, right up here on the front steps of the cemetery, one morning, the gravediggers arrived to find the corpse of a girl only 12 years old who'd been strangled like the others, and this time, once again, they could see giant footprints leading away from the body into the cemetery itself. Instead of thinking, hey, we got the wrong guy, hey, Renee must have been innocent after all, there's another serial killer on the loose, some people got it in their heads that Renee had come back from beyond the grave to get his revenge. And so they went out to Rondelay estate in the dead of night, dug up his corpse, put it in the rowboat, took it out across the Savannah River, and on Hutchinson Island, they burned it and buried the charred remains and ashes not far from where the Westin stands today. A couple days later, they even brought out a pastor to do rites and rituals and prayers over it. And all of this was supposed to keep Renee in the ground. And in some aspects, it did work, because there's not another strangulation victim reported in Savannah until the mid-1800s. However, since then, people who visit the graveyard at night have often reported coming in contact with a very strange presence out there. And nowadays, it's usually somebody on one of these tours listening to the tour guide's voice and looking out to the cemetery, past the gate. Maybe they're trying to read an epitaph or take a photograph, or just take in all you can see of the graveyard while you're listening to the story. But they say after a second or two, you'll start to feel like somebody's in there watching you. Like there are eyes following your every move and watching your every breath. And as you begin to feel this, you'll kind of scan the graves and the crypts in the cemetery, see if there's someone left out there. And most say, just out of the corner of your eye, you'll notice a shadow that just doesn't seem right, like it's moving ever so slightly. And as the cars pass and everything starts to quiet, if you focus on that one spot, you'll actually start to make out the features of a man crouched and looking at you in the darkness. You'll see the huge shoulders and the misshapen head that seems to be staring straight back at you. And he'll begin to rise. Now they say when he comes to his full height, you can tell even from a distance, this is no ordinary sized man. And when he slowly begins to move towards you, you'll hear his footsteps. You might feel your heart beating a little faster. And you see those claw-like fingers reaching out. Oh my God, there it is! Oh my God, oh my God!